Do you really understand the role of sulfur on your farm? That's what we're going to discuss on today's episode of Blueprint to Yield. Hi, I'm Mike Evans. I'm here with Luke Holst, Jared Cook, and we're going to discuss sulfur and the role it has on the farm. And I'll start with, how growing up in retail, I grew up on a farm, but went through the retail chain and didn't really know a lot about sulfur, nitrogen, NPK, the standards, right? And then we got to start using sulfur in our side dress when we were recommending, and we were really doing it to assist nitrogen. It wasn't really looked at as a macro, put it in quotes, right, nutrient. But it's much more than that, ain't it, Jared?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We're probably sitting here today, our listeners, they're talking about sulfur. Why are we talking about sulfur? No big deal. But
Yep.
Actually, I think when you get the nuts and bolts of sulfur, you start to realize how important it actually is.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's so many interactions sulfur plays with all the other nutrients and with plant health, plant stress, you name it. Sulfur, to me, sulfur is equally important as nitrogen, phosphate, potassium.
And I think you're talking about in the plant. I think the other thing that sulfur gets talked about a lot is soil amendments.
Oh, yeah.
In the soil, what it does there. But Luke, it has far more functions in the plant. And we see that. Now, we'll kind of lead off with the data here, what we see with our SAP analysis that we run, just from an overall data perspective of sulfur and where it lies. And when we move sulfur, how that helps plant function.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in our SAP data set, which is large, every year we run these large data sets. I've talked about it before, how it's hard sometimes to glean valuable information from leaf sampling, soil sampling. It's something we always struggle with. When I run a correlation analysis, which just basically means if nutrient A goes up, does nutrient B go up or does it go down?
Mm-hmm.
And sulfur is the only nutrient in our SAP test that drives a positive rise in almost all other nutrients. Potassium and phosphorus, for instance, are almost a 1-to-1. So if you see another ppm of sulfur, you're going to see about another 0.75 ppm of potassium and phosphorus. And not only that, Brix goes up when sulfur goes up. Micronutrients like zinc go up when sulfur goes up. Nitrogen use efficiency, of course, goes up when sulfur goes up. Across the board, most of the nutrients all rise together with sulfur. It's really interesting to see, and that's some hard data. We can pick out, and it's interesting.
So what do you see? What's the overall trend as you look at SAP, weekly SAPs? So I know you and Clint pull up, and even Mike, you guys pull weekly SAPs on a lot of your production. What's the trend look like of sulfur sufficiency?
So it's usually towards the low end of the OL just normally, but this year it's been really bad. Because
deficient.
Yes. We are struggling almost everywhere to maintain sulfur levels. We've seen small little spikes, but it lasts for like a week.
Mm-hmm.
Like we get a burst of some heat and some mineralization, and we get some in the plant, and then it just disappears the next week. And it's tied to the nitrate flood that we've seen. And I think, Jerry, you can allude to a little more of that.
We see that.
Yeah, because when you're talking about those correlations, you just look at it, this goes up, right? In data statistics. But from a plant physiology perspective, can you explain to a grower why, if I drive some sulfur into my plant, why am I bringing all that other stuff together?
Mike, I thought we had an agreement. You're supposed to give me the easy questions and Luke the hard ones.
Well, he slipped me $100 after you talked.
Well, okay, then I'll do my best. Mike, I think it ties to sulfur's overall influence in the plant from an amino acid perspective. So if you think about this, when sulfur enters the soil microorganisms convert elemental sulfur into sulfate sulfur.
Okay.
That's the plant available form. Plant takes up sulfate sulfur. Then that sulfate has to be assimilated by the plant. You guys have well, all our listeners have heard us preach the nitrate assimilation drum. Well, sulfur also has an assimilation system, just like nitrate. But the conversion is you go from sulfate sulfur, plant available sulfur, into amino acids. And there's one critical amino acid that's produced, which is called cysteine. Cysteine is a precursor to a number of other essential amino acids like methionine, histidine. I even think threonine's in there as well. All of these amino acids contribute to critical functions of plant metabolism. Meaning, like methionine, for example, has some interaction in energy transfer. So I think as you naturally increase these amino acids in the plant says, dude, I'm feeling good. It's just like you taking your Vital Force and ATP pump this morning. You guys, you're feeling good. You're ready to go do work. Well, that's how the plant feels. It's ready to go work. You get a stimulation of root activity, which as you drive new root growth, you're accessing real estate of the soil, which is picking up nutrient. And so I think as the elements increase, like Luke's talking about, it's a reflection of root growth activity. I think we see root senescence in a system where sulfate is deficient. And I think the SAP data shows that.
Yeah, and I tell you what, another thing that's really interesting about that, after you talk about the amino acid cysteine. So our the ATP pump research we've done on what it's driving. Now, there's a lot of research on the raw ingredients. In one of the raw ingredients in that product being a direct root stimulation effect. I mean, it's in lots of greenhouse trials on it. So it is a direct root stimulant and it triggers metabolism in the plant, but sulfur goes up by about 31% in our leaf test research on that product. We ran an amino acid profile on that product, which is one thing we do. I don't think a lot of people ever look at, but it's kind of our responsibility formulating the products to do that. And cysteine is the top amino acid in that product. There's a lot of cysteine just carried naturally along in that product. So when we see sulfur rise in the plant,
absolutely,
and we see direct root stimulation as well. So it all kind of tracks together.
Right. Well, really, cysteine, I mean, that's the precursor to a lot of your stress mitigation compounds in the plant. Everybody wants that fancy biostimulant to mitigate plant stress or reduce stress. Use sulfur. Sulfur is the number one driver of all that. If sulfur is sufficient, your plant will naturally have resistance to stressful environments, heat, drought, salinity, all of that. It all comes back to sulfur and its contribution to amino acids.
Well, what about the role of the immune system?
Oh, it's all right there as well. I mean, you think about, what do you got? Glutathione. You got glutathione. Glutathione is an amino acid as well that's created from the sulfur cycle. But then you also have like your glucosinolates, which those are natural compounds the plant can use to suppress nematode, to suppress other pathogen. So there's a tremendous amount of feedback from sulfur that the plant can use to defend itself.
That's fascinating. I'm learning stuff as we're sitting here talking.
You slip me $100 later.
And I kind of want to go back to what I opened up with, just about overall, regular management we have today in sulfur, and, we use a lot for soil amendments. We're learning about in the plant and doing foliar apps. And from a management perspective, just with what you explained and what you're talking about, Luke, maybe each of you can kind of go in, how you guys have changed your sulfur thought processes. Because for me, we can't side dress. A lot of ours are foliar applied, so we've added it as a ride along.
Yeah.
Even though we put on 100 pounds of sulfur on the ground, we never see it go into the sap because it's doing work in the soil 90% of the time, I feel. So I think I want to talk about that and each kind of hit on what you've changed or recommended to growers here in just the recent last couple of years from what we're learning on sulfur.
Rock, paper, scissors, who goes first?
You can go first.
All right. Luke always wins. So I think there's one critical piece of sulfur to consider. It's a negative charge. So like here, Mike, in the last, 12 hours, you guys got 1.5 inches of rain, roughly. Guess where that sulfur's gone? It's gone with the water through the profile. It's moving down.
Mhm.
So you got nitrate, nitrogen negative charge, sulfate, sulfur negative charge, phosphates negative charge, boron negative charge. Those will all move. Wherever water goes in your soil, those elements go with it. And so to me, if you're relying on, say, 40, 50 units of sulfate to carry you throughout the season, but you're not considering the amount of rainfall or precipitation you guys get here in the Midwest as how the water might move that sulfate out of your root zone, that's a red flag. We need to go back and reevaluate how we're applying that sulfate sulfur. So to me, in our heavy irrigation system in Idaho, we rely on frequency of application. We're running 3 to 4 or 5 units a week all season long, tank mixed with our nitrogen, phosphate, potash, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You guys' system a little different.
Mm-hmm.
When we have a weekly application opportunity, you guys don't.
Yep.
And so to that, if I was the outsider coming into your guys' system, I would say this. You need a combination of both elemental sulfur and sulfate sulfur. I know elemental here's got a red flag against it and a couple black eyes because it has acidifying power.
Yep.
You guys, a lot of your soils are already low pH. I don't think that's that big a deal. What I think elemental sulfur has the capacity to do in you guys' environment is slowly feed sulfate sulfur into your system over a long period of time. If it's in the elemental sulfur form, it won't leach. It doesn't volatilize. It's stable. But with good soil biology, good organic matter like you guys offer, man, elemental sulfur in this system would be money. Because it's slow release over time.
We're trying to implement something a little like that. We don't have the elemental portion probably high enough for what we did, but like on our own sulfur management, of course, we can't do the weekly pass like you guys can. So just what our approach was kind of the same thing we did with split plant nitrogen.
Yep.
Let's just start splitting the passes up. And we got about 3 opportunities on our farm to do it. So in the fall, when we put on a little bit of base rate of nitrogen and since phos and potassium, there's always sulfur in that mix.
Yeah.
We probably need to up the elemental sulfur, but so we have that's my first shot. And then we freshen our strips in the spring. So just to get the nice seed bed back, because those strips get stale and we get cold, snowy winters and they don't want to dry out, and so we freshen the strip and crumble it all back up and put more sulfur down.
Right.
And then when we go to side dress, we put more sulfur down with everything else. So to try to split it up, so for those rain events, so we're not going to drive the entire sulfur budget we put on out of the root zone. We at least got 2 shots to start at the top again and let it work its way through the system.
Yeah. I think that's one advantage you guys have, like with Kelly's plant food. That's a huge sulfur load.
Yeah.
I think intuitively you guys are putting on more sulfate sulfur on this operation here than most, because that's, to me, a luxury.
Yeah.
And so it's a huge win. But I love what Luke's saying about the split applications. I would advise growers to look, the closer you can get your N to S ratio, the better ROI you're going to have. If you get it to a 1-to-1, I promise you'll see results. I mean, we've really done that a lot back in the West. Of course, we're high pH, high calcareous nature. So there's no downside to sulfur for us. But the closer we keep that N to S ratio, the better the N performs, the better the whole system performs. You guys heard Luke. Every element moves with the presence of sulfur. So to us, there's not a downside to really forecasting a lot of your budget towards sulfur. Now, don't neglect everything else. And I'd advise this, don't go crazy like with thiazole. You got to consider the salt index of some of these liquid products, like ammonium thiosulfate. Great product, but it has a high salt index. So if you think you're going to go in furrow or 2x2, 30, 40 gallon rate of thiazole to get your sulfur up, you're barking up the wrong tree.
Well, I think that was my next point. You led right into it. So I'll give you that $100 back.
Oh, man. Yes.
Just products,
200.
just products. I mean, ATS is a common one around here. AMS, tri-AMS is very common.
Yep. And
then it's kind of like, well, what's my next option? There's some places around here to do elemental sulfur, but it's 10, 20 pounds. They put out of the micro bin. maybe that's not enough. I think that's a discussion I want to have, is like, guys are sitting here going, okay, I'm liking what you guys are saying, and that's always, I explain this to guys, well, what's my next step? What do I need to do? What can I try? And I think there's some things I want you guys to talk about. And Luke, I'll have you go, is like just nitrosol and what you guys do with the side dress and what you see when you apply that product with your Y drop in the saps with responses. What are you seeing using that product, and why is it working better than ATS?
Well, we like to use the nitrosol product because it is it's a liquid AMS, essentially 809. So it is straight sulfate. So it doesn't have that thiol molecule, which that's probably where a lot of the salt index is coming from, is the thiol molecule tied to the sulfate.
Yep.
Right. The second advantage, and it's not as big of a deal when you get into late warm season, but we've on a couple of the podcasts yesterday, we're talking about these temperatures to mineralize. Okay. So one of the things about thiosulfate is, to get that sulfate off, it has to be metabolized by biology. It has to run through the biological system and basically mineralize like organic sulfur would in the soil. So if you're using a 2x2, say, like we're in central Illinois, so we're about 150, 200 miles south of you guys, and we plant in cool conditions.
Yep.
And so I would imagine you get further north, you guys are planting in even cooler conditions than us, just to get everything out there. You got a tight window.
Yep.
Well, if you're running a 2x2 with thiosulfate, when's that sulfur going to become available? Because we've already established, and we've established it with our sap testing from early on, is that we had good soil temps and they crashed and mineralization shut down. So how long is it going to take to get that thiol?
Oh, yeah.
That's something to think about in a 2x2. And that's how we think about it. And we always run it in our side dress and anywhere we go with it, because it's just straight sulfate. Plus we get, almost a pound of nitrogen out of that too. So we can kind of offset a little bit of your 32 costs when you're doing your nitrogen budget.
Yeah.
Well, the beauty of your nitrosol, it's about nearly that 1-to-1 ratio of AS. I mean, that is a money-making recipe right there.
Yeah. And I really think in an overall budget, you'd have to pencil it out and do some math, but I think it would be achievable with a mix of liquid nitrosol, dry AMS, elemental sulfur, to get a corn belt grower to a 5-to-1.
Yeah. So I would add
sulfur into soil ratio.
I love the mix of products you're laying out there, but consider the uptake timing, like soybeans, corn.
Yep.
You guys didn't think I knew anything about soybeans.
No, I didn't.
The peak uptake. So a soybean has a pretty low and steady requirement for sulfur till about mid reproduction. And then guess what happens? It skyrockets. So the late season game is where your sulfur is essential. Same with corn. Grain fill time, sulfur has a steady requirement, and then boom, it skyrockets. And so we focus a lot of our inputs up front, neglecting the uptake curve on the back end. So that'd be my advice, is take in proportion your sulfur applications, put out what you need to keep nitrogen efficient, put out what you need to keep phosphate efficient, but maintain that slow, steady curve. But then when that peak uptake requirement happens, you better have the pounds to the ground to feed that demand.
Yeah, and I think, we talk a lot about corn, but I think the bean thing is always interesting to me too. And that's more of a protein crop.
Oh yeah.
So you talked earlier about the sulfur driving the protein amino acids cycle, right?
Yeah.
So how much more important sulfur in beans than we even realize?
I think it's huge. We were talking about this last night around our campfire as we're hanging out, It was a good campfire. No smoke. It was one of them propane jobbers, man. Freaking awesome. But anyway, if you think about this, you got soybean called glycine max, indicator in the scientific name that it's a amino acid lover.
Mm-hmm.
You got nitrogen-based amino acids. You have sulfur-based amino acids, and you have nitrogen and sulfur together amino acids. So you got 21 essential L-amino acids in a plant. Well, some of them only sulfur can create, some of them only nitrogen create, but then there's a combination of them that nitrogen and sulfur combine together to create. Well, guess what? The second your soybean plant starts to create that first bean, the demand for amino acids goes up.
Well, yeah, because we're just basically talking here earlier how under fertilizing corn with sulfur we are. How bad are we with beans? Just based off what you said.
Well, Luke pulled up the SAP data from last night. From the last 3 years, I think. Dude, you guys don't even register.
Yeah,
that's how low it is. So if there is low hanging fruit, and for a farmer to see some massive ROI right out of the gate, figure out this sulfur piece, and then give us the credit because we're the ones even talking about it.
Well, yeah, and I just think that that sulfur piece is so important, and then you got beans are so under fertilized to begin with. They're the some people call them a wheat crop or whatever, but
poverty crop
or rotational crop. Yeah.
Poverty pods.
Yeah. Rotational crop.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating to me to just think about that and just think of what you said on the sulfur as a stress defense piece and what beans have to go through. All the diseases we deal with in them alone, white mold.
Yeah.
Frog eye spot.
Oh, yeah.
And those to name a few. So do you think a grower, let's just go with soybeans because we don't talk about it enough, I don't think. If I'm a grower, I got soybeans, I don't really do a whole lot. Where do I to start, or what do I do? I want to grow better beans. How do I implement sulfur into there? Which way do I implement it? Do I go for, the common thing would be the easy button would be like, I'm just going to go spray JIMS.
Yeah.
Why would I not want to do that?
There he goes again, asking all the hard questions. So Mike, I got a mission in life. I want to make mineral nutrition sexy again.
I'll get you a t-shirt.
Yeah. I want a t-shirt. MAGA, we're making America great again. Well, we're making mineral nutrition sexy. I think growers need to prioritize mineral nutrition. Okay.
Yep.
Fundamental that plants feed on minerals. Fundamental. You cannot discredit that fact. So, AMS, any of it would be a good option. However, if you take AMS and you're feeding it to a soybean crop, you've got to be able to deal with the ammonium baggage. Remember, you're getting equal parts ammonium as equal parts sulfur. So if you're just after sulfur, well, now you have to inherently deal with the ammonium. And that's oftentimes a challenge in beans. They're a leguminous crop. They're producing their own end. They trend high on nitrogen.
Yep.
But also as you increase yield, your requirement for nitrogen is going to also increase. So I don't know if there is a downside to AMS. It might be more of a timing issue. We're putting it out too early. You grow vegetation rather than fruit. But whatever you can do, I mean, for guys that don't put a lot of fertilizer on soybeans, prioritize some money to put some sulfur out.
So that's a good point. And say I got a budget, and I worked with a few guys that were going to spread for beans. Economics on beans are ugly this year. They're not great. Yeah. It's pretty thin to begin with if you're even close to making money. But I have $50. Do I just scrap the P&K? And go with a sulfur program on beans? Would you?
No. I think that would be not very judicious use of the money. That neglects mineral nutrition. We need to know what the rhythm and flow of the bean is. Pull some samples. Let the plant tell you what it's needing, and then address the hidden hunger.
I like it.
I think it's a pretty simple recipe, honestly. But we do know from thousands of data points now from you guys' efforts here across the Corn Belt, sulfur is a critically weak link in soybean production.
So here's a thought or a prediction.
Yeah.
I don't know if it'll come true or not. Yeah. We'll see. We'll have to follow it. So
I've been wrong. Kelly Garrett called me out in front of the world that I've been wrong.
Let's put it all full circle. And I think in another episode there, you talked about the high nitrate triggering white mold. Okay. So we know sulfur is very important in the immune response, in the plant being able to defend itself against disease. I think we went down another rabbit hole that, sulfur is required in a lot of the chemicals needed to express defense genes, for instance. we already know we're jacked on nitrate from our SAP data.
Yep.
It's the worst we've seen it in 3 years. It's just in your face a problem.
Yeah.
Sulfur is not registering. Are we going to trigger? We're going to have a big disease issue. We've already got the environment.
You've got the environment. You've got the pathogen from previous years of white mold, that sclerotia overwinters.
Is it going to be way worse because we've got this mineral?
Are we creating the perfect host?
Odds are your plants are about to be susceptible. So I think I would side with you on that wager.
That's a concern of mine. That's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
Need something to watch.
Yeah.
That's $50. That's an easy one. If I'm right, $50.
Well, I'm up 200, so I'd go 100 on that. Anyway.
One last thing here, and I kind of want to circle back on one thing that you talked about, is just the elemental sulfur piece. How much should a guy be putting out of elemental sulfur? If he's going to, if we're going to go, okay, I want to change my sulfur game around, how much do I spend on that piece alone?
Well, give us 3 more months, and then we'll have some better information. Because we've got some guys in Nebraska, Mr. Abrahamson.
Yep.
He's done some different rate studies. I think Clinton Luke.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've got some rate studies
going on.
Mm-hmm.
As of today, Mike's going to put some rate studies out tomorrow. No pressure. Well, that's a field day tomorrow, so you're going to wait. I think if you wanted to do something now, go broadcast 50 pounds or 50 units. That'd be 46 pounds. No, it'd be 62 pounds.
62 pounds. Yeah. Math the other ways.
I do cowboy
That's West Coast math.
West Coast math. Forgive me. But anyway, start with 50 pounds and see what the response is. But if you're going to go down that road, we would encourage pull a SAP sample, apply the product, wait 14 days, sample again, see what the response is. Because it usually is about a 14 to say 20 day response time for elemental to hit the soil and to start feeding plant available sulfate.
No, it's good. It's good. And I said one last thing, but I got one thought for you guys to talk about, and it's in fertility program. We've talked about why sulfur is so important, and I think we've hit that pretty well. Let's look at it from a budget perspective, right? NPK, where's sulfur fit in that in the budget? If some guys are already budgeting for it, right? And I talked about, say I got $100 to spend, and I'm spending 30, 30, and 10, so that'd be $100. Do I go to 25, 25, 25, 25?
I think so.
Yeah, I think it'd pay it because you use common sense. And if you don't have your potassium mineral nutrition is in the tank, use some common sense with it.
It's all balance. And we can't neglect the balance of the mineral nutrition. But to me, out west, sulfur is a priority. Most growers, nearly all growers, prioritize sulfur.
Where they prioritize it at in their plan?
They prioritize it equivalent to NPKs. And NPK, it's right there in the top 4.
Top 4?
Yeah. That's where I'd go. Anyway, it's low-hanging fruit. You want to increase yield, you're going to have sulfur to do it.
Perfect. I like it. We'll end with that. He's Luke Holst, Jared Cook. I'm Mike Evans. If you got any more questions on sulfur, feel free to reach out to us. And we'll see you on the next episode of Blueprint to Yield.